On returning to Ulverston and pondering his future career, his former maths tutor told him of a vacancy in London. John Barrow promptly got the job teaching maths at Greenwich Academy, mainly to the sons of naval officers, and over the next 3 years he found himself rubbing shoulders with London's elite and tutoring their children to supplement his income. One of his students was George Thomas Staunton, a 10-year-old boy with a remarkable aptitude for languages. He was the son of Sir George Staunton, a Galway doctor and lawyer who had been Attorney General of Grenada. Staunton accompanied the experienced diplomat George Macartney to India, and they oversaw the Treaty of Mangalore, ending the Anglo-Mysore War in 1784. Macartney's previous roles in Russia, the West Indies, Ireland and India marked him out as the obvious choice to lead a new embassy to China. He chose Staunton as his secretary, and Staunton chose John Barrow to be controller of the household, a very practical kind of administrator. However, there was a problem. There were no Chinese interpreters in Britain at the time. Sir George Staunton had heard of 2 Chinese Jesuit priests in Naples, and so he suggested his son could learn Chinese from them. So, as Thomas's tutor, John Barrow also spent 6 months gaining a working knowledge of Mandarin. Britain's trade with China was unbalanced, and it was all carried out by private merchants. The British East India Company were only allowed to deal with a handful of Chinese merchants, known as the Hongs. And also, they could only do so for a few months of the year and from the confines of their warehouses cum residences here on Shamian Island, a European enclave on the outskirts of Guangzhou city walls. The Canton system was brought in 1757 to protect China's business interests and to limit exposure to foreigners. Britain's imports, including tea, silk and porcelain, cost twice what they exported to China, and the rest had to be paid for in silver, global supplies of which were being rapidly swallowed up by the Middle Kingdom. The Macartney embassy was a bold move to gain a preferential trade deal. John Barrow's lifelong drive to increase his knowledge spanned commerce, calculus and the classics, which he studied in Greek and Latin. And he applied his talent for maths in the areas of astronomy, navigation, surveying and learning to use emerging technologies. But he also valued ethnography and geography. He was the very embodiment of the Age of Enlightenment, and, by his own admission, he couldn't sit still.
It was in the progress of the voyage I was first made sensible of the high and important advantages which a competent knowledge of natural history is capable of imparting. To me, thus instructed, every living creature, however contemptible it may appear to common eyes, every plant that grows, from the stately tree of the forest down to the humble moss, every stone from the sparkling diamond to the dull pebble that strews his path. In short, every object in the creation, however insignificant in ordinary estimation, is capable of exciting in the naturalist a lively degree of interest. The observer of nature finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything.
Scenes which would have been daily experiences for the young John Barrow, growing up in the far north of Old Lancashire, between the sweeping sands of Morecambe Bay and the rugged crags of Lakeland. Prior to the voyage, John Barrow had found a teacher in Joseph Banks, the famed botanist who had accompanied Captain James Cook on the Endeavour. He learned all about the Chinese plants that Banks had introduced to Kew Garden, and he learned about classification and identification from a true master. On the 26th of September 1792, the embassy sailed from the south coast of England with a fresh and fair breeze. The Macartney mission consisted of over 600 people. Initially, they and the country's gifts for the Emperor were split over 3 ships. The Lion, a 64-gun ship of war. The Hindustan, an Indiaman, the term given to ships owned by the East India Company. And HMS Jackal, a 10-gun brig. The Jackal was separated from the rest of the squadron after a storm blew up. It was replaced by the Clarence brig, but rejoined the squadron after repairs. They sailed for 8 months, past Madeira, Tenerife, across the Atlantic, south along the coast of Brazil, then used the trade winds to head east, past the Cape of Good Hope and across the Indian Ocean.